Ever wonder why an astronaut returning from space is immediately placed in a wheelchair? Without gravity, the human body deteriorates fast. This chart shows the rate of that physical decay. The steep drop you're seeing represents astronauts losing bone mass at a rate 10 times faster than post-menopausal women on Earth. Their hips melt away at well over 1% every single month. If NASA couldn't figure out a way to halt this rapid decay, long-term space exploration or a mission to Mars would be biologically impossible. Their skeletons simply wouldn't survive the trip. You probably aren't heading to orbit anytime soon, but the exact same biological rules that govern an astronaut's skeleton govern yours. The strategies NASA found to protect an astronaut's bones translate directly to your own. NASA's first hypothesis was to keep the crew moving. They strapped astronauts to treadmills and stationary bikes for hours of intense cardio, hoping to protect their hearts and minimize muscle loss. While the cardio machines successfully protected their hearts, the bone density continued to drop. Even crews putting in hours of work came home with crumbling hips. Bone is living tissue undergoing constant remodeling. Demolition cells called osteoclasts dissolve old bone matrix. Following closely are construction cells, osteoblasts, laying down fresh tissue. Scientists assumed feeding the body massive amounts of calcium would allow construction to outpace demolition. But feeding the body extra raw material failed in orbit, and it fails down here too. A study tracking 51,000 people found that taking calcium supplements did not reduce bone fractures or improve bone strength. The data showed a separate risk. Researchers in New Zealand found that the older women taking calcium pills were actually associated with damage to their blood vessels and higher rates of heart attacks. Providing the body with raw building blocks is useless if the skeleton has no biological reason to initiate new construction. To simulate gravity, NASA built a machine that allowed astronauts to pull against 300 pounds of resistance, but even that barely moved the needle on bone loss. Your skeleton doesn't rebuild simply because you move. It responds when it's pushed hard enough that it has no choice but to adapt. The signal is the force. You can see this written into skeletons on Earth. A professional tennis player has the same genes and diet across their whole body, yet their racket arm develops nearly 35% thicker bone than their other arm, purely due to decades of extra mechanical load. In 2008, NASA sent up the Advanced Resistive Exercise Device. Instead of 300 pounds, it let astronauts load up to 600 pounds, allowing them to perform the space equivalent of a heavy barbell squat and deadlift. This chart shows the result. On the lighter machine, hip bone strength still fell by 8%, but on the heavier machine, bone loss stopped. These astronauts came home with bone density essentially the same as when they left. The signal to build bone isn't a pill or a treadmill. It is the blunt demand of a heavy mechanical load. To protect your own skeleton, you cannot simply move, you must actively stress it. A simple daily exercise snack of single-leg hopping can increase hip bone density by 1.8% compared to the resting leg. It's a way to fit mechanical stress into an hour of computer work. While hopping is a good start, the effect size is small, and it doesn't improve the density of the spine. Rebuilding significant bone density requires your own version of that heavy machine on the space station. This means progressive, heavy resistance training, specifically movements like deadlifts and back squats. This has been tested in people usually told to be careful. In an 8-month trial, older women with low bone density performed supervised heavy lifting twice a week with no major injuries, while the group doing gentle exercise continued to lose bone. If mechanical load isn't enough, doctors consider the same final layer NASA uses for astronauts, a class of drugs called bisphosphonates. These are effective, but they require immaculate dental hygiene to prevent rare side effects in the jaw. To keep your bones strong, you have to move past the myth of the gentle walk and the calcium pill. You must give your skeleton a heavy reason to live.